Hello, this is Angie Yingst, and you're listening to Centered, grounded conversations about the metaphysical. Happy March! It's Angie Yingst, or Angie Yingst, however you want to refer to me is fine. I am here with your March 2022 Tarot and Earth Medicine reading, and I am excited to look at the medicine of March. So how this works is this is just a general reading for everyone, and we're going to work with a tarot archetype for the month. We're going to work with an animal ally, a plant ally, and 3 crystals that you can work with. And I'll go over some of the astrology, like the big points in the month that we can pay attention to, and you may want to write down or mark down, because we've got some interesting energy of March. We are starting with the sun in Pisces. So Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. Now, traditionally, the new year was March, the middle of March, because spring. So that's why Aries kicks off the zodiac year. And it really does make the most sense to start the year in spring when everything starts to bloom. I don't like how our calendar kind of disconnects us from the agrarian calendar, because that disconnects us from Mother Earth. And I really think that like paying attention to the wheel of the year and to the agrarian calendar can be really, really important for being in connection and, in stewardship with the earth. So if you want to understand your own cycles, understand the cycles of the earth, because we are connected to the same cycles as everything outside, everything in nature. So when the trees are dropping their leaves, we're kind of dropping some proverbial leaves. We're letting go of things. We're going inward. We're saving our resources. And in the agrarian calendar, this is a time, autumn, where things went fallow, You were deciding which animals you're going to slaughter, which animals are going to stay alive, what's going to get stored, how's it going to get stored, what are we going to have, what are our reserves for the year? You're letting go of things that don't make sense. And the reason that we look at things like which animals are we going to slaughter when we're at Samhain, it's because to have animals meant you had to feed them through the winter. And we can really think about that. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because Pisces season is the end of the winter. So we decided somewhere in Samhain what we were ready to sort of let go of, what was going to drain our resources throughout the winter. And some of us don't let go of that. Well, this is a really great time to start letting go, because Pisces season, at least this Pisces season, is a season of abundance. We are starting the month in a new moon in Pisces on the 2nd of March. What's interesting about what's coming up, and you'll see this while I start to explain, is you can kind of think of Pisces as being this like overflow and excess of water. So Pisces, I don't know if I mentioned this, is a mutable water sign. So you have the 4 elements. So you have water, fire, air, and earth. And you have different qualities, right? You have mutable signs, you have cardinals, and you have fixed. So let's start with cardinals. Cardinals kick off a season. Okay, so that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn for cardinals. They kind of become the leaders, they're sort of the ones that move things through. And they can be a little stubborn, but mostly, they're the bossy ones that sort of take over. They're the ones that lead the season in. Then the middle are the fixed ones. They're the ones that kind of represent their sign at its most. And we're talking about Taurus, we're talking about Leo, and then Scorpio, and then Aquarius. And you can kind of see how they can be all a little stubborn. They're very much their sign. They're not going to be moved if they don't want to be moved. And then the mutable ones are the ones that come at the end of seasons. Okay? Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And they're the ones that are most dynamic. They change. Mutable means change. They change. They flow. Gemini has that reputation. So does Pisces. So does Sagittarius. What is the the joke, what happens when a Sagittarius falls in love? They move across the world. So it really is about that constant changing and flowing energy. And that's what makes Pisces an interesting sign, because that mutable watery energy can be really beautiful, dreamy, intuitive. And the abundance that comes in because what are the planets that rule Pisces? They're Jupiter and Neptune. And Jupiter is a planet of abundance and wisdom and teaching, and it just brings a lot of amazing energy. And Neptune is one of spirituality. So at this new moon in Pisces, we have this amazing new moon energy. So the moon is already dreamy. And then you bring it into Pisces and you get this really wonderful invitation to receive guidance from your spiritual team, from, your intuition. Just knowing who you are is really going to be in the forefront during this. So we have all that amazing energy. Really want to look at, where does Pisces fall on your chart? And if you don't know how to figure that out, it's easy. It's easy to figure out. So whatever your rising sign is. So I'm a Gemini. So my rising sign, I'm a Capricorn sun, Gemini rising. Wherever your rising sign falls. So if you're a Gemini, that's falling in my first house. And then I go in order: Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, and Taurus. And then we're back at Gemini. And you follow suit. So Gemini's first house, Cancer's second house for me. Third house is Leo, so you kind of follow it through. Wherever Pisces is, whatever house that is, this is where you're going to be receiving the most amount of abundance right now, because that's what we're going to see at this new moon. So it's a really great time to set intentions around wherever Pisces falls on your chart. It can be hard when we do abundance work. It isn't just calling in the abundance, not to say that it's easy, but calling in the abundance is kind of the easy part. Accepting the abundance is the hard part. Like when we call in love, now we have to be ready and have had done the work to be able to receive it. And if you haven't worked through that childhood rejection and trauma and all that stuff, it's very easy to reject love that's coming to you. And so the universe is giving you all this abundance. You're like, but I don't deserve that. And we don't even know it consciously. We're just like, no. And we don't know why we're saying no. So the thing about having this new moon in Pisces, and the reason I'm talking about Jupiter is because Jupiter is also in Pisces right now, which is what makes this under this amazing amplification. So we get to be open, we get to be receptive, we get to accept the abundance that we need and want. So this new moon in Pisces is that invitation to receive abundance. And there's all kinds of goodness, all kinds of support ready for you. So we're just allowing ourselves to be open to that. But as we're going through this, then we see on the 5th of March, which is on Saturday, there's a really important event in Pisces, which is the Sun and Jupiter form a conjunction. And this becomes what they call Jupiter's Kazini. Now, I've never heard of this. This is something Chani Nicholas talked about in her reading this week. But basically, it means that Jupiter enters basically the heart of the sun. And so it really is just this blooming amazingness of abundance. And so you'll have this double whammy. And again, you're looking at where Pisces falls on your chart. Which house? What does it have to do with? For me, it falls in my public life and it highlights work, which, as a Capricorn, I can't say I'm too sad about. I enjoy my work a lot. So you basically have these two new beginnings in a row, and that's going to be, I think, amazing. And we're going to be able to dig in to the practice of what we want. Okay? The other part that's going to be really, really important, because you have this dreamy Pisces energy, and we have that new moon, which is an internal energy. We're also looking at Mercury and Saturn conjunct. And the thing about having Mercury and Saturn together is that Mercury is the communicator and Saturn is this like rule, taskmaster, boundary keeper. So this is a really good time to say no to things. And I know that sounds funny to say like, oh, you have all this abundance time, but then say no. What we're doing is like this Pisces energy is going to help you discern what is not worth your time and what is worth your time. And so anything that takes away the dreams that you have held, and I don't mean dreams like, yes, this is a really great dream time. And whenever I do my mentoring circle, I always do dream work in March because this is an exceptionally good time to do dream work and journaling and shamanic dream work and all of that kind of work in dream time. But when I'm talking about dreams, I'm also talking about that soul's wonder, the thing that you hold up that you want to do. So this is a really wonderful time for rest and relaxation. You want to like conserve your energy, conserve your amazing power and magic for the thing that it deserves. Not other people's work. We're not doing crap for other people all the time. And this is really like, I think the biggest theme of March, which is, we're setting boundaries, we're saying no effectively, and we're saying yes to the things we need to say yes to. And so we're remembering that we get to decide what our dream looks like. But where I think, if you're looking to discern, hey, I'm not really sure how this affects me, again, you're looking at where Pisces falls on your chart. And, it's very easy to find your chart out there in the world. Just, Google it. There's lots of free charts available and you can just put in your birth date and your birth time and figure it all out. So we're really, asking this Piscean wisdom to come into our psyche. And it's really understanding our own self. That's what the Piscean wisdom is to understand our own emotions, our own psyche, our own shadow work, our own intuition, trusting ourselves. We are the Queen of Cups when we do this. We are the High Priestess. That's what, that Pisces energy looks like. So we're asked at the new moon to do all this work, and remembering that Mercury and Saturn conjunct is going to mean that we're also grounded and discerning. So we're dreamy and grounded. And that's what kind of helps us to get stuff done, is the grounding part. The other thing that we should talk about is Mars is now in the same sign as Saturn. Okay. The last time Mars was in the same sign as Saturn was March 2020, and we know what happened then. So we don't know what's going to happen. We're not probably going back into another lockdown, but we also want to note that things that come in can be extreme and difficult and challenging. And we know that April 4th to be exact, something severe is coming up. So from now until the beginning of April, we want to be conserving our energy. We want to be accepting the abundance, accepting the things that we need. And whatever you think in regard to this, we just don't want to overload ourselves because we're going to need all of who we are. We're going to have to be at our wisest. All of our cylinders are firing when we're in Aries. So we are going to need all of that energy. Okay. So let's talk about the different points throughout March that maybe we want to pay attention to. March 2nd is the new moon in Pisces. March 18th is our full moon in Virgo. March 20th, only 2 days later, is spring equinox, which is always wonderful energy. And March 21st, the sun moves into Aries, which is that fiery new energy. And, we have no retrogrades in March. That's something to celebrate. So let's just enjoy this Pisces energy. Look at where the abundance is in your life. Look at where Pisces falls in your chart if you can. And then, kind of accepting that abundance as it comes flowing in would be amazing. First, we're going to talk about the tarot card of the month. And of course, I was super excited to pull this card because the world came up And the world has this reputation. It's the last card of the major arcana. And it has a really amazing energy. Some people, you'll look in tarot books and they'll be like, this is all about travel. And that's just like a very cursory understanding of the world because it has the word world in it. You know, this idea of the major arcana being a journey is seen as the, you know, spiritual journey of the Fool. We call it the Fool's journey. Basically, the Fool looks like he's about to walk off the cliff. What he's walking off the cliff into is into a spiritual journey that he is, you know, encountering all these different characters and situations and spiritual lessons through the major arcana. The World is that last card. So there is a kind of brightness that comes in with the World. You know, the figure on the front is, it looks like a naked woman, but actually it's a naked hermaphrodite, sometimes shown without breasts. Like this one on the Rider-Waite card is shown with breasts. And it has 2 batons, and it's in a laurel wreath that's the victory leaf. And it has the 4 holders of the corners. And again, these are also symbols of the fixed signs. So we have Taurus, the bull, the Leo with the lion, and then you have Scorpio and Aquarius. So there we go. So they're also said to represent the 4 archangels. We first see these figures on the Wheel of Fortune, which is basically when we're halfway through the major arcana. So, and on that card, they're almost like sketches. They're not filled in and colored, whereas they are in the 21 card. And that's because this is the idea of spiritual fulfillment. You know, they've also come to represent the 4 elements. And that can be really important too, because the idea is that at this point, you've mastered all. And we know that the tarot is split up into all these elements. Elements are very important. And so this idea that, you know, you have come to master this, you have victory over this, it's even more evident when we really talk about this figure in the center. Like I said, it was a hermaphroditic figure. And I know we don't use that word a lot, but in this case, we really need to use that word hermaphrodite because it brings together Hermes and Aphrodite. And that was intentional here because they were the Greek models of male and female sexuality. So the idea of a hermaphrodite meant that this person who brought together the ideals of Hermes and Aphrodite, the masculine and feminine, it brought together the mind and emotion. And, you know, the idea that they're coming together in this duality and becoming one, where they represent both genders, both expressions. They can come together in this way to be a complete person. In Greek mythology, Zeus split man and women apart, so they're constantly searching for their soul mate. And that's this idea. And in Kabbalistic ideas, the first man was also hermaphroditic. And God pulled the rib out and made them 2, right? So this idea is, you know, this knowledge of good and evil is the knowledge of dualism. And we're coming back to this idea of oneness, you know, this idea of understanding that we are one, which is important, you know. And, you know, in terms of shamanic thought and shamanic ideas, you know, we're constantly trying to break apart this myth of separation, that I am separate from you, that we're somehow different. But in terms of spirituality, the second we're seeing a duality, then we're tearing. And that can be really the destruction of consciousness and of the spirituality of humanity. So, you know, when we look at the world and we're bringing all of this together, what does it mean for us? You know, it means that we are in a place of spiritual completion on some part of our journey. Now, when we look at the astrology and we're coming into this really dreamy Piscean month, what we're really looking at is what's next for us. What are we ready to call in? We're at the end. So it's not that you have to immediately start thinking, what's my next goal? It's not that. It's that we can reflect on this whole journey. And, I really love, Rachel Pollack talks about this, because she splits the major arcana into 3 sections, 1 to 7, and then 8 to 14, and then 15 to 21. And basically she says the triad of that 17, 14, 21, which is the Chariot, Temperance, and the World, are 3 different victories. The first one is the victory, the Chariot, is the victory over life. The second one, the Temperance card, is the victory over fear, particularly fear of death, because it comes right after the Death card. So you go through all this stuff to try to avoid death, and then you die. And so Temperance is the rebirth, because we've conquered our fear of death. And maybe the biggest victory is the one of spiritual misunderstanding. And so that's what the World comes to represent. It's this victory and this greater spiritual understanding. You have a kind of completion after going through everything. So how do we use this? We can think of the World as a completion of a cycle. Some cycle of our life that we're ready to, bring to a close. And we can, see it as a spiritual completion or an actual completion. Maybe you're done with your job. Maybe you're starting a new job. Maybe you're done with a relationship. But there's a kind of victory involved here that means that whatever's coming is a positive thing, And then again, same with our astrological understanding, it's about accepting the fruits of our completion, accepting abundance. When something's done, it's done. And we have to be really clear about that too. All right, so let's talk about the earth medicine. So the plant medicine for the month is dandelion, which is really exciting because I'm pretty sure at least those south of us will definitely start seeing dandelions popping up, probably before me, but I think March is a fair assumption. That maybe we'll start seeing some little flowers popping up here. Dandelion has got a really great metaphysical and physical use. I use dandelion root as a beautiful diuretic. It's also really wonderful for cleansing the body. I will roast dandelion roots and make my own tea, though I do like to buy just the traditional medicinals dandelion root. I have that with tea. It is really good for perseverance. While dandelion is generally considered a weed in most places, you can use every part of the dandelion, which is lovely. You can eat the leaves, you can roast the roots, you can eat the flowers. There's every part of it is useful, and it's a weed. And a lot of times when you talk to gardeners, they say, how do I know which one's the weed and which one's the flower I planted? And usually weeds come up really easily. They don't have deep roots, but dandelion do. They have really deep rooted energy. And that can be exceptionally important when we're going through a dreamy time like Pisces. So we do need that rooting. So dandelion tea is wonderful in the evening when you are wanting a cup of coffee but don't want the caffeine. I love to drink it as that, it's a great coffee substitute. So dandelion comes in like a real sunshiny, happy looking flower too. So, what I love about dandelion is that every single one of my children thought it was the most beautiful little flower. And all the adults thought, oh gosh, another dandelion in my yard. Whereas I'm like, yay, dandelions. So we can always remember that when you think of dandelion and stop using the term of abuse of weed, you can really see it as a useful plant medicine. Okay, so let's talk about some of the crystals for this month that I pulled. And I used cards this month, but it was very interesting because when I started shuffling, I was like, I'm pretty sure Amazonite's going to come out. And the first card to pop out was Amazonite, because Amazonite is that stone of good boundaries. It helps you speak your truth. It helps you communicate in a way that people can hear. It is a really, really useful stone. It clears in the throat. It also resonates with the solar plexus. It is often used in tandem because they grow together, Amazonite and smoky quartz. So you can use if you need the grounding, you can pair it with smoky quartz for grounding and truth telling and boundary keeping. So really such a great stone. It has gotten its name from the Amazonians, right? The Greek mythological tribe of women, and they were powerful women. So this is a feminine stone, and all of the stones this month are pretty feminine stones, and we'll talk about that, but when we go through them. But they're also powerful stones. Like, don't let feminine, when I say they're feminine stones, that doesn't mean they're wimpy. They're really, really, really strong. And Amazonite's easily found. It's got a beautiful color. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Amazonite is also considered like a watery stone, which means, and I always tell this to our crystal students, which is using watery stones cools our hot emotions. So if we're angry, we can use some watery stones like Amazonite to cool it down. And that's what's great about using Amazonite for holding boundaries. It's not that we get more fired up. It's that we are able to speak our truth calmly and clearly and cool down hot emotions. So we are able to communicate well. So the next stone and the next two, it's really interesting they came in together because they are seemingly related and yet not related. So the first one is rhodonite, and rhodonite is a very pink stone. I used it so much when I was going through breast cancer. It was kind of my go-to for that heart area. But the thing about rhodonite is that it's considered like a really fiery stone, and we use it a lot for internal organs like the liver and the kidneys and things like that. But it is a really beautiful stone of the heart chakra, but it helps do things. It's an ally that helps with self-acceptance, radical self-love. It's not a wallflower stone. It is a stone of nurturing the self and also acknowledging your personal power. Some people will use rhodonite both in the heart and in the solar plexus. Sometimes you'll find rhodonite with a dark, like that black stone in it that really grounds us and helps us to kind of strengthen what's in the heart. So it really is such a wonderful ally for the work that we're doing this month. And I'm excited that we're using rhodonite because I personally have had rhodonite on my altar for, coming up on 9 months at this point, I think. So we're really acknowledging who we are. So the next stone is rhodochrosite. And so rhodonite and rhodochrosite get confused a lot, but they're two different stones altogether. They just happen to have similar names. But rhodochrosite is also a heart healer. Now, I find rhodochrosite really, really gentle. I find it gentle and really important for that soft, nurturing self-love. Whereas I find rhodonite, when I work with it for self-love, to be a strengthener and to be more activating in the solar plexus, to get my dreams done and to understand who I am and to radically self-accept, whereas the rhodochrosite I find more gentle and nurturing. And how Naisha Asian, or I should say Samaya Astor, wrote about it in her book is that this helps heal the inner child, the rhodochrosite. And it has that energy of just being really gentle with our child and really give that love to ourselves that we need. So it is a healing stone, and it's a stone that heals in the heart chakra. So it also can resonate in the solar plexus, but it is not as strengthening, not as active. It is about healing and recapturing power. I mean power in the sense that, understanding that we can call all of our power back to us and be our own loving parents, or our own loving partner, or our own loving teacher. If we have like the mother wound, the partner wound, or the teacher wound, we really go in with rhodochrosite to do that work. And it's a wonderful ally for grieving if you're grieving, a wonderful ally for healing old traumas, healing old wounds, for learning how to remother or reparent the self. So we've got these 3 great stones this month, and then our animal ally this month is butterfly. We worked with butterfly in July of 2020, so if you were part of my shamanic journey group and getting the shamanic journeys back then, you may remember our butterfly journey. This journey with butterfly will be different than that one, so I'm going to work with the energy of now and work with butterfly in terms of that. So butterfly is our ally for transformation. And butterfly is worldwide seen as a symbol of change and an archetype of transformation, an archetype of death. So they often are seen as the spirits of the deceased communing again with the earth and coming back, restructuring our sense of being. Because one thing that I think is really, really interesting, and if you haven't heard it, you may want to listen. I think it was a Radiolab episode, if you listen to Radiolab on NPR, or it's, also podcast form, where they talked about butterflies in their chrysalis. So, the reason that butterflies have this amazing archetype of transformation and change is because they have this ability to metamorphize. Is that how you say it? They start as larvae, and then they become caterpillar, and they cocoon, and they go within. And their final stage of transformation and transmutation is leaving the chrysalis and rebirthing. So the thing about butterfly that I thought was really interesting in this episode is that they did all kinds of study on butterflies. And they gave caterpillars certain food that maybe had poison or wasn't tasting good or something like that. And then all these caterpillars developed an aversion to this certain food that they were giving them. And they went through the whole process, and the butterflies also had an aversion to that. So they understand that the caterpillar and the butterfly retain the same consciousness, right? The interesting part, though, is when you split open a chrysalis, a lot of people will think like that inside of a caterpillar is just folded up wings ready to burst forth. But that's not what happens at all. In fact, they become like gel, like a goo, and they literally reform. So it's hard to say that what happens in a cocoon, like they don't even look like anything. They don't look like the caterpillar or the butterfly. They're something entirely different. So that was basically the question, was what happens? How this literal is almost like a literal death, and yet they somehow retain their consciousness. And it brings a lot of huge questions for us about that journey of life and death, about the consciousness that goes from life to life to life to life to life, if you're someone who believes in reincarnation or in past lives or in any of that. So I think that's what's really interesting, is to work with butterfly at this specific time in our history, when we're thinking about life and death a lot. We've seen just this disease devastate the world, and we think about like our own cocooning that we've had to do between 2020 and 2022, are we ready to rebirth? Or are we still partial goo? Are our wings not helpful? And there's like some great butterfly idea. I just keep thinking of this one butterfly researcher who talked about, when he first started working with butterflies and seeing the butterfly come out of the cocoon, and he tried to help rip it open, and the butterfly came out very easily because he ripped open the cocoon, and his wing never developed because the strength to rip through that, it kind of cleared off some of the goo that helped clear his wings and dry his wings and helped him be a strong butterfly. And because the man helped him, he never developed that wing fully. And I think, there's so much of the butterfly's medicine that we ourselves understand and go through. And I have written a few pieces about my own, experience with childbirth. But when I had my son Zachary, he came out very fast, and he also, he needed that process of going through the birth canal for a lot longer than I let him go through it, because I was so desperate to get out of pain. And so, it never squeezed the fluid out of his lungs, and he had to spend, some days in the NICU, because he had, fluid in his lungs. And so we think about these things, but we don't really think about them in terms of our lives. These hard periods that we go through, they push all of the liquid out of our lungs. They help us strengthen our wings, and those can be really valuable lessons for us all. So I hope this medicine in March is going to be a wonderful ally for you, and that you enjoy March and rest and relax and say no and hold strong boundaries, and accept Amazonite as like maybe your shield. If you could make a shield out of Amazonite, you can like project it out from the heart. That would be wonderful. All right. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Centered with me, Angie Yingst. If you'd like to send me a question or comment about this show or any shows, you can send them to Angie@themoonandstone.com.